All right, good morning, everybody. Let's scroll all the way back up to the top. I was telling them earlier I have a new computer setup, so just bear with me. New office, new computer setup, and trying to get used to my whole situation right here. So doing something different. But thank y'all for joining us. We just kind of wanted to have an office hours for now that we've released the final report template. It is mostly the same as it was before. We have a few tables that have been updated. I think Amanda updated them just to kind of make sure that they were cohesive with what is in the 21st Century Grant and what we're looking for cohort 16 and 17. As you know, cohort 16 is in their last year, so this is your wrap up report to say, did they meet their goals? Did they not meet their goals? And then, you can also put something in there to say if they are continuing to go with 21st century or if they are not. Their future plans would be great to include in the report for their last year. Cohort 17 has another year. This would be a great time to try to give them some really good recommendations because they're going into the season of writing the new RFA. You might want to give them some good recommendations. Go ahead and look at the current RFA, which is the cohort 25-26 RFAs on our website, so that your recommendations can be in line with the new RFA because there are a lot of differences in the new RFA. So go ahead and be looking at those, getting a refresher so that you can give recommendations that are going to be accurate for those cohorts. The new cohort or the new RFA is not out yet, obviously. We're not, don't push us yet because we're just trying to get the summer only cohort 25 off the ground and start the training process this week for our cohort 26 grant sub grantees. But we want to go ahead and at least be looking at it so that you can get an idea because I don't think the cohort 27 will be super different. So that'll at least give you a way to, give them some recommendations. I say that because I'm, as a former sub grantee, you need all the recommendations that you can. And I will say during our in-person trainings in the past year, I've heard sub grantees say great things about recommendations that y'all have given them when you are visiting their sites, but we don't see it reflected in the final report. So make sure if you're giving them these great recommendations that you include it in the final report. Sometimes it's not directly, it's based on something that you saw and they made the change so that you can say that they did something great with that or they heard your recommendation that made it better. But if you don't put the recommendation in your report, we don't know. So we want to make sure that that is recorded, that their stakeholders know, that the State Department knows, that we know, because, just hearing it word of mouth felt really good that y'all were, giving them recommendations and making a change for them. But we want to make sure that it's reflected in the final report so that those can be recorded and, be seen by our stakeholders. So our first couple of pages, there are not really big changes. Always be mindful that this is a template. You do not have to make it look just like this. I have some people who put pictures on the front. I have some people who put colors on the front. You can change this template up however you want to, as long as the information remains. So I would love to see the 21st century logo on here, but as long as you put final report 2024 cohort, tell me the cohort, what year, this information, you put the school logo on here. I don't care. Make it your own. I was telling somebody that the final report when I was a sub grantee, I used it as an executive summary and I would give it out to potential funders and I would give it to my stakeholders. So I know some people don't necessarily share this out with as many people as they can, but let's present it to where they want to present it because it is such a great reflection of their programs. So let's look through. I don't think we changed anything. And if y'all have questions as we're rolling through different pages, because y'all have had it for about a week or so, So you might have questions. The table content still has the links to it to try to make it more conducive for y'all as you put things in the table of contents. Your table of contents does not have to link, but your table of contents does have to be correct. So it should have the right pages and different things like that in there. We want to make sure that we're realizing that this is a report that is broadcast to stakeholders and can be put on their website and is available for review. So we want to make sure that it doesn't include errors. Um, let's see. Site
Eric,
information is the same. Activities are the same, the staff ratios. And if you have ways that you've thought of about giving your grantees this information or getting the information from your grantees, please chime in because we are recording. We want to make sure that we are helping each other. You know, there's no point in everybody just completely recreating the wheel if you come up with some great and wonderful way for your grantees to communicate this information with you. We have sent a lot of requests from them to, give y'all as much data as possible. Um, supporting documents, things that they are uploading into Cognia because those are pieces of evidence, but also when y'all do the site visits, wanting to make sure that you're observing different pieces of qualitative data so that you can reflect that in the report. Let's see. So these tables are the same, table 3.1, the attendees. A lot of this data you're going to get straight from Easy Report, which is why we kind of make it that way. So it's not difficult for you to get the information. But when we give you access to Easy Report for you to get this information, we're looking for you to tell us something that is gleaned from this information. Don't just put the charts in here and kind of check the box and go on. Be mindful that we're asking for you to look at the data in this section, analyze academic performance trends based on the following assessments. And then we're giving you the grades reports for English and math and science. And these should be in Easy Report if they had their grades in their original RFA. We did this year make the GEPRA measures um, optional, but we are working really hard this year to make sure that that data is really complete and that it will be available to you in the next, hopefully within the month, I would say, Amanda. We're going to try to get it from Power School and put it in Easy Report. We've kind of worked out some processes with them and with the sub grantees to make sure that that data is a lot more accurate and hopefully we'll be ready way ahead of time to be able to put it in the final report if you choose. And that information is going to glean a lot of assessments and data, quantitative data. So be mindful that it is optional, but that might be something that is really going to show growth or not growth or in for your grantees, for your sub grantees. Table 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3 are ones that have changed. They've been updated. And so it's asking for your school name, the total number of students. So this is still information that you can get from Easy Report. The only difference is we're asking for when you give us the number of students. So this is the number of students per grade level with the data. So it might be 20 students. So then it's asking you students with the highest grade and no change. Easy Report is going to give you that number. So that number might be 10. So we're going to want you to put it into a percentage and you say, oh, okay, 10 of 20 is 50%. You can make all of these in Excel, but you're going to have to know how to use Excel. We are expecting for you to be able to do those things to make the comparisons for this report. So be mindful of that. That's the main changes that I have seen when going through this final report. But again, if you have questions, this is the time for y'all to ask questions. Don't
Erica,
wait and ask us questions later. Be mindful that, if you have the question, more than likely somebody else has the question too. So your question will probably be helpful for others.
And Erica, just want to let y'all know, I changed it up. It's still asking basically the same information as it did before, but the reason why it has school name is because that was for the sites that have more than one school they serve at that site. And just looking at some of the reports from past years, it seemed like it got kind of confusing when you have two different schools and you're trying to report the data for two different schools in the same report. So that's you would just make a copy of it if you had that situation. If you've got two schools being served by one grant, then you would just make a copy of that table for each school, and that way you're reporting both their numbers, and you're not trying to like I noticed where some people or some charts they were trying to report the two different schools within the same chart, and it just got confusing. So that's why that change was made. And then adding the total number of students or the total number with reported data, I felt was important just because sometimes that's telling in itself because you may have 100 kids that attend that program, but you only have data for 60 of them. That, to me, that's important for you to report because, that indicates an issue there that you can make a recommendation about. Why do you not have data for all 100 kids? And that's just an example, but that was why I think I added that to the table as well. So I see the question, if we have two schools served by one grant, they won't need separate reports. So when I say two schools served by one grant, and Erica, you can chime in if I'm wrong, I mean not that the subgrantee has multiple sites, but when one site that gets, one grant, one pot of funds that goes to more than one school. There's not a whole lot of those, but there are some sites that serve more than one school that are either like right next door to each other or they're close to each other. That's what I'm talking about with that. And normally they would do one report for that. Is that correct, Erica? Or do sometimes, I mean, you may have sometimes had done two in the past, but the ones I saw, I didn't look at everybody's, but I looked at some, and it appeared they try to just fit everything into one report.
Right. Most of the time they did one report, so.
Yeah.
It's a good question, Michelle. Anybody have more questions on that? Because that is the main thing that I noticed that was updated in this one.
Just for clarification, if their grant did not require them to collect grades, does this report actually require them to collect grades even if the grant did not have grades in their objectives?
I guess you're exactly going to answer that. I just went based off of the past reports and just updated what was currently in there. So I'm not sure what's been told you guys in the past. I know that grades is something we look at for GEPRA, so it should be something they're collecting, whether they wrote it into their RFA or not. It should be something that they have access to. So, now, I will say this, I included science in here just because STEM is a big thing that some of them focus on. But if collecting science grades is not something they focus on in the past, you wouldn't have to include that part. But they should have grades for English and mathematics. But Erica, you can chime in on what's been asked for in the past.
Most grantees do. That's something that we can kind of reiterate to the grantees because I guess let's reiterate it to the external evaluators. You either need to, so when we're saying that GEPRA data is optional, you have to have some type of quantitative data. So you have to have some numbers to measure for this report. So your grantee, sub-grantee either needs to have grades to compare, or you need to be looking at their GEPRA data for comparison. One or the other. So you can't skip the grades and skip the GEPRA. If they don't have grades in the system, then you need to be focusing on their GEPRA data, and it is no longer optional to you. That's my
Well,
I agree.
They will have assessments to use as a measure of change. They'll have to have their assessment since it's required in the GEPRA, but they don't necessarily have to have grades in your elementary school, right?
I think that's why we worded it. And I don't know why it was worded in the past, but in my mind, when you say when I say grade comparison, I'm not necessarily only thinking A, B, C, D, um, F grades. It could be an assessment. It could be a change in assessment from the beginning to the end. So you could tweak this area and make it that way if that's what they have determined is going to be their form of assessment. Not necessarily looking at grades, but looking at their improvement in an assessment score from one year to the next, or from the beginning of the program to the end. Then I think this could be tweaked. And I think that's the reason why, instead of saying like for the column, for the third column over where it says number or percent of students with the highest grade and no change, I thought about putting an A and no change, but not everybody does A, B, C, D, F grades. Sometimes, especially at the elementary school level, they're not using typical A, B, C, D, F grades. Sometimes it's an improvement in levels, or I can't remember. I've been told, I never taught elementary, so I know it can be an improvement. They look at more of a what level the child is at, more of a grade level, assessment type thing. So you could change it to that. Or, I wouldn't have a problem if they've said that they're going to use a different kind of assessment, then just kind of tweaking this chart to make it where you're focusing on that assessment instead of necessarily a letter grade. It's just this is just a good place for you to put some sort of data and talk about whether there was a change or not a change. And this is how GEPRA breaks it down as far as, that first set of numbers being the students with the highest grade. So in other words, if they already had an A last year and they maintained their A, then you're going to report those kids. And then kids that have less than or whatever's equivalent to an A in whatever assessment you're looking at, that would go in that first column. And then the next column is going to be your number of percentage of students that don't have an A, but they still didn't change from last year. So maybe last year they had a B and they maintain a B, or maybe they had a C last year, they maintained a C, or whatever's equivalent in the assessment that you're looking at. And then, the next one will be an increase in grades, and the next one is a decrease in grade. So you're welcome to change the wording there. It's a Word document, and to make it where it fits to the assessment that you're doing, or that they're using to determine if kids are doing better or not.
Amanda, you made reference to last year template. Last year template was based off of Easy Report.
Yeah.
And this should be really familiar to them because they have to compare whether or not they showed any type of improvement. And so this chart is similar to what Easy Report has, but if they have a question on how to complete this particular chart, just get in touch with us and we'll walk them through it.
Yeah, it's asking for the same information pretty much that last year's chart did. I just changed kind of some of the wording and added I think I added the part about the percentage with the reported data. Because that is something that sorry, I dropped something. I'm trying to find it, something important. But because that's something that Easy Reports also, or that the GEPRA measures ask us to report as well.
No more questions on those tables. We're gonna move on. So again, this is more quantitative data, so numbers. This is the GEPA report results. Mind you, it is optional, but we are hoping that data is going to be in Easy Report in the next month. Once it's in Easy Reports, I feel like it would be great for you to go ahead and put that information, that data in there to further give weight to your program's success or a measure for this year. Like how are they, going towards their success? And these will be charts that are just the same as what is in Easy Report. But remember, you have to analyze the data. You can't just put the data in here and leave it, and that's it. Most people that are reading these reports, yes, they can see if the numbers go up or down, but we want to make sure that you analyze that. So we have added a few instructions to make sure that the data is analyzed and not just listed. This is again the Gipper measures. This is the one for surveys. At this point, we are doing for Gipper summer surveys and school year surveys, but I think we only talked about, well, there's possibly a gap in the last summer surveys, which is fine. But for this summer, we are pushing currently right now our grantees to complete the surveys so that we can have data in this. Again, I'm telling you, the Gepper data, we worked really, really hard. Your sub grantees worked really, really hard to make sure that that data was a lot more complete in the past school year than it has been before. So I really feel like you will glean a lot of information from that if you pull the Gepper data. We're making it optional because in the past, it's been not available to us before the September 30th deadline for the final report. But this year we have been working with Power School. Amanda has access. I have went through a whole 15,000 student spreadsheet to say that the majority of our sub grantees right now have information for their students from last year in the system flagged in Power School, which means that data is going to go over to Easy Report with no problem. So I think we're good for GEPRA,
Yeah.
which means it's optional this year, but next year as we have processes in place to get that data ahead of time, it might not be optional. We might make it mandatory again as long as we see that we will have it ahead of time. It's just that we don't want to keep going into, last couple of years as we are still new with Gipper, not having that data in the time frame for y'all to complete the final reports, and then some people just leaving it blank and not giving us any type of quantitative data, and then others asking for an extension until later in the year so that they can get the data. So we're trying to kind of be mindful of those things, which is why we made it optional. But if all goes well this year, it might not be optional next year. And
Uh, Erica, please
just
remind them
mhm.
that Easy Report is not their only data source. They have the program director, the site coordinator. They're going to have to do some research in order to get some of this data. Easy Report is not your only database. You're going to have to communicate with your program director because they can pull some things off of Power School that we don't have, we can't get, but they can. So it's important that you all communicate with the program director or with your site coordinator to make sure that you gather, the data that is being asked.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Linda Williams. I was talking to one of the program directors last week, and she was telling me how much data she can pull from the Ames portal and how it has just pretty much all the things that we're looking for GEPRA, but all type of quantitative data that you can add into this report. So if you're working with an LEA that person, normally the program director has access to that portal, that could be another data point that you could potentially get directly from your program director without having to wait for the things to upload into Easy Report. Matt asked a great question. Will we inform you when the data is available in Easy Report with the Kepra? Yes, we will. Again, like I said, hopefully it should be next month, but because Power School turned over like this weekend or in the next week or so, we had to all of our sub grantees had to flag their kids by the deadline was the 13th. So if they flagged all of their kids, we should have no problem receiving the data. Like I said, Amanda gave us a test trial to see how many students we have in there. it's listing around the same amount that we have in Easy Report right now, which is a good sign. So I think we should be fine to get that data into Easy Report next month so that y'all can have time to add it into your reports and analyze that data. And remember, all the external evaluators should have access to Easy Report, so you don't have to ask your program directors to pull that data for you. And if you don't have access to Easy Report, you're in as a read-only option. So you can't add anything, you can't take anything away from Easy Report, but you can pull the reports. If you need help with pulling the reports, get with Linda Williams. She'll walk you through that, or you can get with me. Um, Remember, and I think we have it a couple of times in the report, do not put actual student data in the in the report. Protect our kids at all costs. Their FERPA data should not be put into this system. We've had a couple of years back, somebody pulled a report for student data and they include all the students' names on the report. And I'm like, no, this is a public document, can't do that. So just be mindful, no student data. These are generally reports are asking you number of students, might ask you some demographic students data for every student, but no specific student thing. Also be mindful because we ask you, make this report if it's more of an executive summary or something that they could use as a living document that they give out to stakeholders. Make sure that, add some pictures. They have plenty of pictures. I've been asking them in the last couple of weeks to send us summer pictures. They have sent me some awesome things. I think it would be great for y'all to see pictures of things that they do outside of days when you're going to their sites. I think it's great for stakeholders to see how they're actually implementing this 21st century funds, but also be mindful that when they send you these pictures, you need to make sure that they have photo release for the students that they're sending you the pictures for. I have had in the past, I've had a student who was in the foster care system, and so they could not be in any of my pictures. And I just went through, and every time we had pictures sent off, or we put them on a flyer or whatever to make sure to not include that student. That situation is more common than not, so just make sure that they have photo releases when you're including pictures, but definitely include pictures. Again, template. It does not have to look exactly like this. We do want you to submit it in a PDF version. We are going to give you a link for where you will submit it to. Make sure that when you make it a PDF that it is compressed. It is not so large of a file that we can't get it once you upload it, or you can't upload it. We had that issue in the last year or so. I think Qualtrics gives you 2 MB or something like that to upload it. So make sure that it's compressed. This should be in a PDF. We normally give you how we want it titled because we get one of these for every sub-grantee. So once we get 100 of these, if the file is not labeled correctly, it's hard for us to figure out whose it is besides having to open each individual one. And that takes a lot of time away from us trying to actually read this and create reports and documents for it, to make sure that y'all are giving them recommendations and such. Um, let's see, parental involvement. This is just a number, but you can give. I've had a lot of people ask me about parental involvement in the last couple of weeks, especially with field trips. How could they make field trips into parental involvement activities? These are great things that you can help them with. A lot of times they just need another person to kind of bounce an idea off of. You can look at, what they've offered as far as parental involvement and try to help them figure out how to level it up into another type of activity or a better activity for their parents. You have not only the knowledge of being a educator, but you also have the knowledge of being a community person. You have the knowledge of being possibly, a parent, and you've seen it on the other side. So I take all of those things with me when I give suggestions and ideas to sub grantees because I want them to be looking at all aspects of it. Are you not having good parent turnout at your activities that you're offering at 1 o'clock in the middle of the day. Well, maybe you're not having good turnout because they're at work and you need to offer activities in the afternoon. Maybe try to figure out a cooking activity to go along with your activities so that you could give parents a snack when they come in or give their kids a snack when they come in so that they will stay a lot longer. But again, a recommendation is not going to be that you provide incentives to students. I've seen that previously, and I'm like, this does not align with 21st century at all. So make sure when you are completing the final report and as an external evaluator, you have read the RFA that 21st century that they're under. All of the RFAs are on our website. So cohort 16's RFA is on there, cohort 17's, and the current 25, 26 so that you stay within the guidelines of 21st century when you're giving them recommendations and what they put in their RFA. So you should have read both of those before you complete, well, before you become an external evaluator, but at least before you complete the final report for them. This is findings and recommendations. So this is where, we gave you other sections where you will analyze the data for each section, but this is where you put the whole picture together. You let us know, did they meet the goal? What did they do to meet the goal? Refer to the logic model. This is where you can refer to graphs and tables that are in other pieces of the final report. You could also potentially include some additional graphs and tables in here, and you can put it in the appendices and link it to the goals and objectives section. But this is where you're telling us, did they meet the goals? Did they not? What are the recommendations that you had? And then other findings. So this is other findings is where I feel like you can put the recommendations that might not link specifically with a goal and objective for you, but things that you gave or told the subgrantees when you were there that helped their program. So there are things that you might say, hey, I noticed that your side door was unlocked. Hey, I noticed that you had a teacher who was very friendly and she did XYZ with a student, and I thought it was a great something. That's where you can put that under other findings because we want to see that you were there again. Don't forget, I told y'all that I think y'all should be there at least 2 hours when you are observing so that you could try to see a good chunk of the after school day. For summer camp, you might be there a little bit longer. I don't expect for you to spend a whole 8 hours with our summer programs, but just be mindful that those are things that we are looking for. Summer
Erica,
programs, go
Erica,
ahead.
that section 7 has changed pretty good. So I don't know if you want me to talk about that, but um, before there was a table that you could choose to use instead of writing out this information that it's asking for. But when I was looking at the different reports that have been turned in before, those that used a table had very limited amount of data in it just because the fact that you were trying to squeeze what you were trying to say into a table just made it where there was very little information being provided. And so I'm sorry, I just took I took the table out because the reports that didn't use the table were way better. Not to try to offend anyone, but they just seemed to provide so much more data and information than the ones that did try to fit all that into a table. I just felt like taking that table out was the best thing to do. So that was removed from the old one. And then I just tried to break this down, and the other thing I took out was section 8 before was a place for you to analyze the survey results, but I felt like that could be combined with this section because sometimes when you're referring to things that were found in your surveys, they're going to apply to these evaluation questions and these goals that were created, that you guys created with your sites. And so it made more sense to me to include the survey results in with the other data that, when it makes sense to talk about the survey results, depending on the evaluation question or the goals that you're talking about. It just made sense to me that you go ahead and include it here. So that was a change as well. Erica, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Thank you. No, I was saying thank you. I forgot that that was tables previously, and now it's in a line, so you can give more information for that, which I think is good. Um, just make sure for the status, you're telling us did they meet it? Was it unmet? Were they working towards it? And then give recommendations for them. Make sure that your recommendations are in line with 21st century. I can't say that enough. And make sure that they're helpful. Like there are some things that we're starting to see, and it's not good. So if we keep noticing a pattern of the recommendations aren't good, or you seem like you went for 30 minutes to the sites, we're going to have to start calling that out and making sure that you are no longer on the list to be an external evaluator. I don't want to keep, you know, telling people who their external evaluator cannot be. So just make sure that your reports are reflective of a good work product. Again, this is going to be something that is available to stakeholders. So be mindful of that. Summer program, if they don't do summer programs, then you do not have to complete this section and you can just delete it from the charts. This year, we do have a summer only program subgrantee. So their final report will have the summer only information in it, but also some of the other information that kind of will create a complete final report. I think that external evaluator is doing a good job trying to make sure that those sections are complete. So you'll give us the hours. This is the summer site information. You'll give us the staffing information, the ratio, activities, what's their target population, all of these things you will get from either Easy Report or their initial RFA. Give us the summer activities. Specifically, you should have um, your form should be in your appendices from when you went and did site visits. Don't forget that you should do the overall, so the one that is labeled overall, which is a little bit longer, and then you pick which other one that you want to do. So if that was what is transition time, which is between how they're transitioning between activities, or if you picked another one, that's fine. You just need to make sure that those two are attached to the appendices and they are signed. Don't forget when you do those visits, you need to sign it, and your program evaluator, program coordinator, sorry, program director or site coordinator needs to sign to say that they received that copy because they have to upload that into Cognia. Um, and they have to upload that into their compliance, their continuation application, not just Cognia. So they need those and they have to be included in the appendices. So be mindful of that. Do you have samples of an exceptional final report recommendation? I'd love to see how others compare to my own work and continue improving. Yes, Linda Williams, we created a box. Can you find that link where we put some final reports that we felt like were good and gave good recommendations? If we can't find it before the end of this, we will email it out again and we'll try to go through and pull some recommendations that I feel like were good and aligned with 21st century.
I'll find some, Erica.
This is the activities. And then we have questions that you answer. Do they use award funds to offer students a broad array of additional services? Summer demographics. This is going to be from Easy Report. Adherence to the grant. Did what you see adhere, or was it accurate to what they put in the RFA? This is important. Because in a sense, y'all are also the eyes and ears of the 21st century program. So that's also a recommendation that you can try to make to them to try to make sure that they are adhering to what they originally put in the RFA and adhering to 21st century guidelines. So that's something that you can, give that recommendation while you're on site and include it in the final report. Then results and recommendations for the summer. Again, we want you to analyze this. What's the plan for utilizing and sharing final results? This is collaborative between you and the program director. Y'all need to have discussed when you did the final, when you did the not the final, the evaluation plan and your site visits up until now. How are they going to distribute this report? Who are the stakeholders that they're going to give it to? And then determining the key points and key findings. You just don't need to hand over this report and y'all never discuss it. You need to be discussing it with them to try to figure out how they can achieve their goals and objectives that they initially put in the grant and what's going well, what can be improved. Again, making recommendations. What stakeholders to share it with. I always had a staff meeting to discuss it with my staff, what the findings were, so that we could try to work on making it better. A couple of years ago, I had one external evaluator, and the program director invited me to the Zoom where the program director, all the site directors, me, and their external evaluator were on a Zoom where they discussed their evaluation plans, and then they had another meeting where they discussed their final reports. I thought that was a great idea. It made sure that all the staff people or all the administrative staff knew who the external evaluator was. They were all in a line with the agreement, and it all didn't fall on one person's shoulders because it was a collaborative effort. So just be mindful of that. And then the appendices, these are all required um, in this order. So make sure that you put the dated signature page has to be signed by the external evaluator and the program director. Make sure that it's included. If you send this report and it is not included, then you have not sent this report. So we will be asking you to resubmit it. Make sure that you have a copy of all the site visit observation instruments with the scores and the comments and the signatures from you and the site director or the program director. A sample lesson plan, ideally from the session you observed during your site visits. A copy of your resume or your CV, any surveys or questionnaires that you use to gather the data for your final report. If you use the one that is an easy report, then there's a place where you can pull a report on it, but then you also should have surveys and questions that you ask the stakeholders, teachers, students, parents, staff, partners, while you are on site. So those should be things that your questions should be given to us in the appendices, and then the data that you analyzed should be listed in here also, not your handwritten notes but an actual analyzed um, quantitative data. How did you analyze it? And then photos, and you can put the photos either in the appendices or you can put them throughout. I'm good with it either way. Any type of things that they gave you, copies of flyers, emails, photos, service learning projects, anything that you have that would be helpful and support the things that are put in the report. That's what we're looking for in the appendices. And then here's the signature page with the link to upload and a QR code to upload also. I heard somebody unmute.
Ms. Rucker, Nancy Horton, I just have a question. In the summer data that comes from the EASY reports, last year, I could not find the grade level by hour numbers. So I did those by hand in the EASY report for summer, the grade level by hours. Am I just overlooking that, or is that data not in EASY reports? Did anybody else have any trouble with that?
Linda Williams, didn't you tell me the other day that the summer hours are not in there? 'Cause we talked about this with our summer only races. The summer hours are not in there by hour bands, so you will have to create that by hand. Most of our summers,
It's,
They only have to do 75 hours. Some do a lot more, some do a little bit more. So you're only calculating generally in the first three bands, the less than 15 hours, 15 to 44 hours, and the 45 to 89 hours. So no, there is not a summer report for any report with the hour bands. You have to calculate that on your own.
Okay.
um,
I did that
Dr.
last year.
Horton, it is in an Excel spreadsheet in Easy Report. So if you would just put in a formula, it would do it for you. Usually what Easy Report does is for the school year and not the summer because the summer is so short, but it's usually just the school year. But they do put in the data that the grantees have already placed into Easy Report, but it can be calculated. And if you want us to show you how to calculate it, using the Excel spreadsheet, we can do that. It's just a matter of arranging that Excel, spreadsheet around, but it can be done.
Okay,
Uh,
well, I did it by hand, like, I mean, I did with tick marks last year.
Oh, don't do
counted.
that. Don't do that. Just call me. I promise you, we will set up an Excel spreadsheet. You can do it a whole lot quicker than by hand.
Okay, that'd be great. If you guys would just send that out, I'm sure it'd help a lot of people.
Okay.
I actually, can you hear me?
Mhm.
Okay, I've looked at a site for the summer already, and it is in there this year by our bands. And it was not last year.
Yeah.
So I don't
that's
know if
good.
AZ reports did an update, but I think if you run that report before they actually start entering data for the school year, I think that it is in there.
Oh, okay, good.
But
Program.
it wasn't like 2 weeks ago, but I looked last Friday and it was.
Now, be careful with that because some of the summer programs are not over. If the
Oh,
summer,
I know.
yeah.
I realized that. I was
Yes.
just looking to see if by any chance it had been added.
Yeah, be careful. Just make sure your summer program is over and those numbers have been updated because Easy Report is ever changing. And so make sure that you check to make sure that that information is correct because they're still calculating.
Great.
and
Thank you
updating.
so much.
We'll send some instructions for that, Nancy Horton. If it should
Okay.
be, I'm glad to know that they have updated that on the website, but we'll send some directions for that on how to pull that one.
That's great. Thank you so much for your help.
No problem. These are great questions. Anybody else have more questions? Comments? Okay, well, if not, I appreciate all of y'all joining us for our office hours. We're definitely trying to make sure as we're pushing out documents, we're just opening some time that you can come on and ask questions. We can go through the things that are updated. And, for those who couldn't join us, we're sending out the recorded links and they'll be on our YouTube page. Also, just to make sure that we're clear on what we're looking for. Can we discuss cohort 26 for a minute? Yes, you have questions?
Hey there, rather than keying it in, I thought I would just ask. So are we capped at 3% or at a monetary amount for each one of these grants?
So when we went over cohort 26, we left the cap at 3%. However, some grants got way more money than they have in the past. And if that was the case, I told them, they shouldn't be taking it all the way to the full 3% cap because that's just, probably too much. That it probably shouldn't go above, I think, the $6,000 per site, which tends to be the top amount that was paid prior to this, unless there was a really, really good justification for it. So we didn't change that. We may change it in the new grant, but we did advise them to not necessarily, if they got way more money, if they got close, $450,000 or something like that for one site, we definitely recommended that they didn't take it all the way to the 3% cap, because that's just, that's more than what should be paid.
Okay. None of the sites that I will be evaluating got nearly that much.
Okay.
But I did want to clarify that because some of the grants that we have multiple sites.
Right.
And, I'm like, oh, that's still, I don't know if it was capped at $6,000 when. And so I was under the impression if there were multiple sites under one grant, that there would be two evaluation plans, but that's not so. There's one evaluation plan and one final report, but then
Double
a
the
site
site
visit
visits.
form for each
Mhm.
one. So that's the way that works.
I
The
would
hope is that you'll be able to go and visit the sites in one day.
Right.
And that you'll just split your time between, because generally if they link two sites together, they're pretty close. Like
Sure.
Amanda said, they could be sharing a campus. I had two sites on one grant previously, and they were about 5 to 10 minutes away from each other.
Right.
So the hope is that you can do the visits in one day, and so that it wouldn't be too much of an extra lift, but it will be an extra lift. I think Amanda kind of discussed that when we were going through the RFA process, that she advised them several times to just separate it. But some people, just depending on their circumstances, kept it together, which that was their choice.
Mhm.
So, but the 3% is still, it is what it is.
Okay.
I think I mentioned during the initial external evaluator training that we had last year, or in the fall, that my suggestion, Amanda said justification, I'm saying budget. Create a
Sure.
budget to justify why your cost should be more than the 6,000 if it is but still within the 3%. It can't go over the 3%, but if your cost for travel or the time or whatever is above the 6,000, then justify it with a budget and some type of narrative justification.
Okay. Is there also, I had a Zoom call with a new grantee, and she had mentioned receiving an email about completing a form to get that money to drop to them in July versus August. But I didn't know anything about that. She asked if I could get clarification.
Sure. So when we wrote the RFA for cohort 26, at the time we had Brandon Payne was our state chief financial officer. And I don't know if you guys know this, but the federal government, their fiscal year runs actually 18 months. So it actually starts July 1st and it goes until October 30th of the next year. So it's an 18-month fiscal year. And every other state in the United States, except for Alabama and one other state, has the same fiscal year as the federal government. And at the time when the RFA was written, we thought we had Brandon Payne was on board with moving our fiscal year to align with the federal fiscal year. And this way, our grantees, not just for 21st Century, but for all federal programs, could get their money before the school year started. Because right now, as you know, with our fiscal year starting October 1st, it's hard, especially for a brand new program, for them to have, to start their program at the beginning of the year, or because they don't have access to funds until October 1st. So we wrote on there that they would have the option, at the time, we wrote on there that they would have the option to request pre-cost award that would go back as far as July 1st. Well, in that time, in the over the year that it's taken for us to do the RFA and give the grant and everything, Dr. Payne left and we got a new chief financial officer. And because he's new, and because of some feedback he's gotten from the school systems, he's just not ready to make that big change yet. I think he's thinking about it for the future, but right now he's just, and I don't blame him, you know, that's a huge change to make your first year coming into a new position. And so he didn't change it. And we went back to, okay, they're not going to have access to funds until October 1st. Well, the problem with that is we told subgrantees they would have access to funds. About half of our people who got the 26 grant are brand new subgrantees, or at least the site is. And they wouldn't be able to start their program on the first day of school, which is what is a requirement for the RFA. And we've told them they had to come to Mega, which is in July. So there's things that we told them to go ahead and be prepared to spend money on prior to October 1st. So we went back and forth with the county trying to figure out a solution to this. And the only thing that we could figure out was that if they are currently a cohort 16 school and they got the grant for cohort 26, we're just going to let them continue as normal, carry their funds, continue funding their program with their current grant, cohort 16, through September 30th. And if they need extra money to help them get through the beginning of next year, because maybe they didn't budget, you know, maybe when they did their budget at the beginning of this year, they weren't thinking about next year. You know, if they need additional funds, we've got plenty of supplemental funds that we can add to their account to get them through September 30th of this year. So we're just letting them continue with their 16 grant, and they'll go as they are. But for the half of the schools that are brand new, what we're having done is we have EGAP that's creating. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and approve their budgets in cohort 26. So, sorry, there's a lot of background information. So, when you do an application in EGAP, you actually have, for the cohort 26, you actually have to change the year to 26 to even be able to see their RFA. So if any of you try to go in and see your cohort 26 applications, which are open to the public, you'll have to change the year to 26 to see it, okay? I've had a couple people ask me that. But what that also means is that their funds aren't available into 2026. And so what we're having to do is have a simple application, I guess is what we're calling it. We're calling it a cohort 26 pre-award fund application. That's what we're calling it. But it's going to just basically be the site's information and a place for them to put in a budget. And it's being created in 2025. And what we'll have them do is once it's built, it's taking more time in EGAP now to build things. But once it's built, I've been told it'll be done before September. Hopefully it'll be earlier than that. But once it's built, we will move a portion of their 2026 funding into 2025, whatever they request. I've sent out an email to all of them saying, go ahead and tell me how much money you're going to need to run your program between July 1st, you know, like pre-award cost things by July 1st to October 1st, or, you know, I'm sorry, to September 30th. Tell me how much money you think you need. And so once that application is built in the 2025 EGAP, then we'll move that allocation over into 2025, and then they'll have to go in and budget those funds. And then we can allocate money to them out of 2025 funds. Again, we have plenty of extra supplemental 2025 funds, so that's not an issue. It's just we couldn't give them 2025 funds out of their 2026 application, the way that the system is made. So it's going to cause more work on them and us, unfortunately, which I hate, but it was the only compromise we could come up with accounting in order for us to be able to give them access to some funds prior to October 1st. And so that's just our runaround. So even though the application is not built yet, once I've asked them to submit that amount they need by by Friday of this week, I'm gonna send out a reminder, probably today or tomorrow, but I've asked them to send that amount to me. We'll go ahead and say yes or no, that's fine. And then they can go ahead and start spending that money, even though it may not be until the beginning of September until they're actually able to put that budget into, before they're actually able to budget those funds out in EGAP and draw down the reimbursements. But we can go ahead and like give them permission to start spending that money as early as July 1st. So I hope that helps.
It does help. So I'm just gonna go back. They thought maybe they had missed the deadline.
No, no,
Um,
no, no.
Okay, so I will just go back and say, look at your email and have that information.
Yeah, and
Um,
we have our first training on Thursday, and I'm gonna explain that again verbally in the training. It's really hard to put something like that in writing and know whether people understand what the heck you're talking about. So I'll go through it just like I did with you guys just now. I'll go through it again with them. That'll be probably one of the first things I talk about, just so they understand, and can ask questions if they're not sure.
okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
problem.
Thanks for asking those questions, especially about the cohort 26 external evaluators, because I've had that question a couple of times. So it's good for us to go ahead and clarify so that everyone watching the recording will know. But if there aren't any more questions, because we're a little bit over the hour mark, then we will end the Zoom. I appreciate y'all being with us. If you think of questions afterwards, send me an email and I will, if I don't know the answer, I'll figure it out. And well, yeah, y'all have anything? We appreciate y'all. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Linda's.